And I hope the hat's okay. I was at the Cardano summit and I had it on. So if people watch this and they were there wondering there was two of us there with cowboy hats on. So if they're wondering who we were, they'll know now. So
I love it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Cardano and Coffee. Our guest is Drew Persson. He is a fourth generation cattle rancher and CEO of Beefchain in Wyoming. Welcome to the show.
thanks for having me.
Guys, before we get started, we're going to have some really exciting questions for Drew today about what's going on in Wyoming, how his cattle ranching company has become more of a technology company now. If you like Cardano content, you want to keep up with developments happening around the Cardano ecosystem, then make sure to subscribe and like this video, because YouTube will then recommend more Cardano ecosystem content for you. But now let's get back to Drew. So Drew, tell us about your journey as a cattle rancher so far.
Well, so sorry about that. The cattle ranching industry it's kind of a rough industry to be in right now. There's three major packers or slaughterhouses or processing facilities, if you want to call them that have a monopoly on all the beef that's available in the United States. They have facilities scattered all across the country, and they're able to buy beef from other countries like Mexico and South America, and they can buy it for really cheap, and then they can ship it into the United States, and they can repackage it in the United States and label it as a product of the United States and sell it for a huge profit. And that's kind of undermining American ranchers' profits, and a lot of years breaking even, keeping our head above water. So that's kind of where Beefchain is trying to solve a problem with that.
So there are other companies in this space that have sort of unfair advantages, you would say?
Yeah, so since there's only three of these major packing facilities, and through extreme consolidation and they're extremely efficient, there's only three, so that would, obviously be considered a monopoly, but government officials and legislators, they don't want to touch it and mess with it because they're afraid of messing with the supply chain of food. Since they're so efficient at it, they don't really want to ever, step on their toes. So.
I see. And doesn't Mr. Hoskinson have a ranch out there?
Yeah, he just actually bought one down in Wheatland. It's right at the foot of, I went with him to, when he first looked at it, it's right at the base of kind of some mountainous kind of country, and it's a really pretty place. So, and I've heard he's done a lot of additions to it, buildings and things like that.
I see. So he's local to you then. Is that right?
Yep. He would be from where I'm at. I'm in the northeast corner of Wyoming, and he's kind of down in the sort of the southern central part is where Wheatland is. So it's probably a 4-hour drive from here to there.
So what kind of animals do you raise?
I raise a cross of Angus and Shorthorn cattle.
Interesting.
So,
okay, so you already mentioned some of the bigger struggles that cattle ranchers are facing right now, but it must be a lot of work. Does the consistent work around the clock, does it energize you, or does it exhaust you?
Well, you've definitely got to love it to do it, because obviously it doesn't pay a whole lot, but it's the busiest times of the year are in the springtime when all the new calves are being born, and you've kind of got to watch out for them. Obviously, if a bad snowstorm comes in, you've got to go out and make sure nothing's freezing to death. And then in the fall, like we just got done with what we call the fall works, and that's when you're selling all of the steers that are going to be eventually made into steaks, and you check all of your cows to see if they're pregnant and things like this, and you move cattle to where they're going to spend the winter, and it's a busy time of year, but it really is enjoyable, and it's a good way to raise a family. So that's why I would say most ranchers do it.
So when did you start doing it? I mean, were you always like this?
So I was, obviously born and raised into it. It's fourth generation rancher. I went to college to be a photographer. I I didn't ever actually get a degree or anything. Did some photography, wildlife photography for a couple of years, and just you don't make much money doing that. So I just came back to ranching and have really enjoyed it.
So what's the
Just kept
political
looking.
climate right now in Wyoming? Can you describe a little bit about what the Wyoming politics looks like right now? Who's in power? Who's doing what? What are some of the highlights that are happening right now in Wyoming politics, especially
Well,
pertaining to blockchain and things like that?
yeah. So Wyoming is pretty heavy on the Republican side, and uh, I would say the vast majority of people in Wyoming are kind of a small limited government type of people. So I think that's probably why blockchain technologies really fit in here. Is it's sort of goes against the fiat currency and what the government's doing with that. And so the legislators that wrote those bills to make Wyoming such a blockchain friendly state they really jumped behind it, and it was pretty easy I think for them to get all those bills passed. And everybody in Wyoming that knows about what's going on with blockchain technologies is pretty excited about it. We just got done with the WYO Hackathon, which was really fun, and then the Cardano Summit was the weekend right after that, and there was thousands of people there, and it was an exciting thing. And it's really neat to be in a little small town of Laramie, Wyoming, and I think there was, I don't know how many private jets were at the airport there, something like 15, and just having all these people from all over the world come and be excited about this. So,
Yeah. Would you say that Wyoming is like the blockchain capital of the United States?
oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
It's
With the laws
exciting.
that they've written and what they're working on, and with Cardano, being pretty heavy in Wyoming, and the University of Wyoming is doing a lot. You can minor in blockchain there now, so I think those kids, whenever they're done with their degrees, I think it'll almost be like a draft, a draft pool. There'll be these different blockchain companies trying to draft all these different students because of the knowledge that they're going to have. They've started a couple different mining pools and staking pools. They've just gotten some nodes, and they're learning how to put those together and do all that. And I think that's going to be. They probably don't even realize how valuable they're going to be when they're done with that, because for guys like us, that there was no blockchain degree or anything you could go get. So I think that's going to be a big deal in the next several years.
It's exciting. So when did you make the transition over from into technology?
So when when a rancher typically sells his cattle, they're born in the spring, he keeps them until the fall. They weigh around 550 pounds, and then you sell them, and they usually go to a feedlot or something like that. And then you don't know where they go after that. There's the supply chain ends, the rancher's knowledge of it ends right there. And it also for the consumer, it's the same way. When you go to a grocery store or restaurant, big packing facilities. So when I first was learning about blockchain technology, when they were writing these laws, I didn't really know much about it. I had tried to buy some Bitcoin because I was in the state of Wyoming. I couldn't. So I watched all kinds of videos and stuffed as much information in my brain as I could about blockchain. And there was this company called Walton Chain that was using some sort of I don't know if it was an RFID chip or something similar to that. They were using that to track t-shirts at stores so that they could see where certain t-shirts were more popular. And they're also using it to track their fabric so that they didn't have a warehouse full of red fabric and then have another shipment of red fabric to show up. And I thought that's something you could do with cattle, because we were already utilizing RFID tags. You could have all this data that goes along with this non-repeatable number, and that can be tracked along the blockchain. And so then I actually started with my wife and then another guy, but we were kind of getting sideways on what we wanted to do with it. And then that's when another group of us formed Beefchain, and that would have been, I think that's coming up on 5 years ago. So.
Hmm. So describe Beefchain to us a little bit more.
Okay.
So that's how it got
So when we
started. So yeah, go ahead.
so when we first started out, we were just tracking, a steer from the ranch it was born to basically your plate. We called it pasture to plate. But there wasn't really much of a reason for a rancher to get involved. There wasn't a guaranteed return on investment for buying these tags and, you know, having all of your information on a blockchain. So what we did is we went through the USDA and we became basically what's called a USDA verifier. We're a PVP, a process verified program. And we can go to ranchers or ranches and cattle that qualify, we can verify them and qualify them as things like all natural, which means they've never received any antibiotics and don't have any growth hormones. You can just go just the growth hormone free. It's NHTC, non-hormone treated cattle. And then say source and age verified, where we verify that they were born where the rancher claims they were born and when they were born. And that's important because in order to sell these animals overseas, they have to be under 36 months of age. And I believe Japan was the first country that sort of implemented that. So the way that works is a rancher will fill out an application, and then we actually come and do an on-site audit to verify these claims. And the rancher has to pay a enrollment fee with Beefchain and also that audit fee. But the return on investment in that is they're getting 10 to 20 cents pound, 10 to 20 cents more per pound when they're selling their animals, because consumers are wanting this information. They're wanting to know what's this animal been treated with? Is it antibiotic free? They'll pay more for that, pay more for no hormones and things like that. So 10 to 20 cents a pound when you're talking about a 600-pound animal and several hundred of them, that's a pretty huge return on your investment of, you know, $2,500.
So the demand for information about the products that we're consuming, specifically beef, we're paying a premium for that because there's demand for that.
Yeah, so we actually had the University of Wyoming. They have some MBA students, some independent study students that actually did some research on that with us, and we found that somewhere around like 98% of people would pay more for a steak if they knew where it came from and knew what had been done to it versus, you know, a piece of mystery meat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I could imagine like going to shopping for steak and having the thing right next to it showing all that data makes it much easier for me to say yes to it.
Yeah, and that's actually what we've started working on next. Is we've got a rancher that is raising some really high quality beef, and we've tracked it on a blockchain, and we've got a restaurant that's participating, and this will all happen hopefully in January, because you got to wait for the cattle to be the right weight and things, so that's why we got to wait till January. And we've actually created these temperature toothpicks that has this QR code on there, so this will come out on your steak. You scan the QR code, and it has the rancher's made a video explaining why he does things the way he does and how he does them, and you know, the history of the ranch and things like that. And then if you're geeky enough, there's the transactions on the blockchain on there if you want to look at those, and the certifications that those beef have as far as the all natural and things like that.
Yeah, because I read everything. I mean, personally, I know myself. I'm always an information junkie, so I want to know everything. When I'm going to the grocery store, I'm reading everything. But yeah, it definitely takes a lot of the ambiguity out of your meat, which is important. So, what about economics with regards to the economics of things? How has the beef industry been affected by the federal political moves that have been happening lately?
Well, it's definitely hurt. You know, the obviously the pandemic there. Um, the beef packers were really price gouging. So when you went to the grocery store and you're paying record high prices, that wasn't reflected with the ranchers at all. We were getting half of what we had the year before. And there's a lot of people, a lot of ranchers are wanting for there to be country of origin labeling on all these packages of beef, just hopefully to increase their profit. And that's basically what Beefchain has done is not only have we done country of origin labeling, it's down to ranch or even pasture of origin labeling. But it's been pretty rough. And then, you know, there's countries like Brazil that are cutting down acres and acres of rainforest to raise cattle in, and I don't know that consumers would necessarily want to buy cattle from ranches like that. And basically, China is buying all of their beef from Brazil instead of the United States for political reasons
I
mostly.
see.
And now there's been a mad cow outbreak in Brazil, so that might change. China might switch back to buying beef from the United States, but it's scary for a rancher not knowing really where the cattle market's going to be every year. It can be just so crazy. I think it was back in 2015 and 16 we were getting record high prices and life was good, and then it just, maybe it was 2013. I'm not sure about that, but then the bottom kind of falls out of it, and you're just breaking even some years, and that's a scary thing to do. That's a scary feeling. And when these legislators and stuff really don't have your back, it's frustrating.
Mhm.
But these packing facilities, these processors are profiting billions and billions of dollars, so they're able to throw millions of dollars at lobbying, and they're able to land some really big government contracts to kind of line their pockets. And ranchers, there's so few of us, even if we all ganged up and created our own organization. There's a couple of organizations already,
Mhm.
but ranchers can't really seem to come together and agree on anything. But even if we did, we could never raise that amount of money for lobbying power. So it's,
So
government stuff like
what's
that.
the
That's
future?
ridiculous.
What's the future going to look like for ranchers then?
I think what a lot of ranchers are going to have to switch to doing is they're going to have to kind of retain the top 10% of their cattle and raise them themselves and feed, and then sell them directly to consumers, to restaurants like this rancher that we're doing the QR code with. And then you'll have your rest of your herd that goes into the commercial system, and that's what you can go and buy at a grocery store stuff. But ranchers have to start looking at their product as a high-end product and not as a commodity. This is what I think has to happen.
Yeah, I
Because
definitely think
if
there's merit in that.
yeah, what we're kind of trying to do is what microbreweries did. Several years ago, you could only get beer from Anheuser-Busch and Coors, and then there was some lawsuits from some microbreweries, and now, I mean, every state has several of them, and they're all doing pretty well. So if they can do it, why can't a rancher have, or even a co-op of ranchers supply beef to local restaurants,
So let's talk
and
about,
the
yeah,
profits that they would get from that is bigger.
I see. So you're saying that people, ranchers are going to have to start taking the top of the best of their product and catering to a different market for that.
Yeah, they'll have to go, instead of selling it down the supply chain where it ends up in one of these big major packing facilities,
Mhm.
they just sell directly to consumer, like, or directly to a restaurant or a kind of a niche style farmers market or grocery store or something like that. Or if you can find
Yeah,
we're work on getting even just a small restaurant chain, because
yeah. I
that
mean,
could.
I totally agree with you on that. I shop at farmers markets all the time, and I'm where I'm staying in Florida right now. There's one guy who's got beef, but he says it's from someplace. But how do I know? I'm only taking his word for it. So
Yeah, and hopefully when blockchain technology becomes more mainstream, people will understand that this has been tracked on a blockchain. That data could never been messed with or changed, and so
yeah.
there's something to back up those claims.
Not only that, but I've seen a couple of documentaries. I think the Morgan Spurlock documentary about the chicken farmers. He found out that in order for a chicken farmer to be able to say that their chickens are raised outside, they simply have to have a very small amount of space outside for the chickens to be able to go outside, even if they don't go outside. But they'll still be able to label that. But now we have a way to actually verify the truth of it.
Hmm. Yeah,
So I think
and that's kind of what
that's
ranchers.
what you're leading into. Yeah.
Yeah, and ranchers are kind of really afraid of what's happened to the chicken industry is what's going to happen to the beef industry, where these packing facilities already own all these chickens, and the chicken farmer is just basically paid to take care of them. And then if this chicken farm isn't profitable enough or isn't in the right location, they can just end you like that. And right now the ranchers still own their ranches, still own their cattle, but if it just was, I think that's what the packing facilities are trying to do is get themselves in the position in the beef industry that they have in the chicken industry. So that's what
So,
we're fighting against.
I see. So what's going to happen? Ranchers are saying what's happening with the chicken industry, and they're saying that that could potentially happen as well in the beef industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what we worried about.
So you selected Cardano to design and build your project Beefchain. So why Cardano?
So when we first started, we were using Ethereum, and they were just kind of like, here's what it costs. They didn't really seem to, I guess, care much about what we were doing. It was just, here's what it costs to have this information on our blockchain, which wasn't cheap.
Mhm.
But Cardano reached out to us and said, we really like what you're doing. We think this is great. They put a team together for us, and I meet with them once a week,
Wow.
and just really wanted to reach out and help. And that was just, uh, at the time, Cardano was kind of just starting up and wasn't the big deal it is now. But it was still really exciting that this tech company or blockchain company wanted to do this.
Yeah.
And it's just been really exciting working with them and meeting all of them. And I got to meet them all in person at the Cardano Summit, which was really fun. And I think what they're trying to do versus what other blockchain companies are trying to do is they're going to be on a different level, I think, in the future.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
certainly,
their
certainly.
competition will be something versus, yeah.
I agree. I think that the Cardano, I don't know what you call it, the hive mind or the brains behind Cardano are just on another spectrum from head and shoulders above everything else. But so you said you started with Ethereum, and then you met with Cardano and that. So do you feel like Cardano has different approach, a different that matches more with the lifestyle of a cattle rancher than, say, for example, something like an Ethereum? Like, is there something about what about Cardano? Besides the technology being very advanced, was there anything else about Cardano that attracted you to it?
Well, I've met Charles a couple of times. I think he's definitely one of the greatest minds of our time. And he loves his steak. He's a steak eater. He comes from a ranching background. I believe it was his grandpa actually had a ranch in Montana. So he knows that kind of stuff. He knows the lingo. He really understands what we're trying to do. And so that was kind of the main thing, like this guy,
Yeah,
this guy's something special.
yeah,
Let's hitch our wagon to this. If they're gonna reach out and help us out, let's definitely jump all over this. So, and just I like the proof of stake and things like that versus proof of work. And at the Cardano Summit, I got to meet some stake pool operators, and it was just that the whole community is just, it's really fun to be around. That was a really fun deal to go to, and that's a lot of it. So
yeah, yeah. Well, now you can prove your stake. No pun intended there. So really, how much are we underappreciating the brilliance of something that can't be taken away from us by tyranny, such as a blockchain like Cardano?
there's I guess the things that they're doing at the legislative level right now with the know your customer laws and things like that it is kind of scary, but they can't come and take your Cardano or your ADA off of your computer. You'll always own it. It is property, and it's it's just one of those things. You've got to educate yourself on how fiat currency works and what the banking system is doing and what they've done for years and why we went off the gold standard. And you've got to kind of get into the history of all of that to really appreciate it. But once you do, you're just ready to dump everything you have into it and completely get away from the fiat currency. That's not any advice or anything, but I'm just saying that I think once this becomes more and more mainstream, uh, even when they try to regulate it, I think it'll be too big.
It's yeah, I agree with you on that. Very exciting time to. This is the technology that can really. I think Charles Hoskinson said that we are at a time right now. We're at a fork in the road where we can either go the route of tyranny or we can maintain our freedom. So it's really up to us and how we react at a time like this. Very critical time. I think it's crucial for us to teach ourselves about money, economics, politics, everything. There's no better time to do it, and I think a lot of us are being called to do it, and you know, I'm glad we're able to do it together. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
And with all the things happening with NFTs right now, I think that'll help bring us into the mainstream. I mean, if you think about a musical group or a musician, typically they rely on a record label to be their funding. But if you're able to make an NFT and you're popular on TikTok or something like that, and you can sell these NFTs, and then your fans are the record label, and the fans that liked you before you were popular that bought a bunch of these NFTs are now going to have these NFTs that are worth a lot. And I think that'll help a lot with making this more mainstream. But I think that's the main struggle right now, is getting this to become more mainstream. But it's getting there. So
yeah.
I mean, if
Once
a
I think
rancher from Wyoming,
once I think the big institutions make it acceptable, like once it becomes the norm, which I think we're getting there, then adoption is just going to happen. So what kind of research did you do before deciding on what blockchain? I mean, you already had decided on Ethereum, but how extensive was your research about the different blockchains when you were deciding, and what are you looking for a company like yours?
we looked at like Ripple and of course Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I don't know, back then and ever since then, there's just been so many blockchain companies that have come and gone and have disappeared. And so, we wanted to kind of go with one that we thought was gonna be around for a while. And then, like I said, Ethereum, no, I'm not bad mouthing them or anything. They were a huge company, and we were just little small potatoes. But with Cardano reaching out and saying we like what you're doing, that was the biggest selling point. And meeting with Charles, like I said before, was also the bigger selling point. The fact that he was able, or that he wanted to meet up in person and things like that was a big selling point. And
Yeah. So it was really
but
about the people that reached out to you, the community, the organization, the support that you had that really sold you on it.
yeah, and other people in the company are extremely blockchain savvy, like Tyler Lundholm, who's the author of several Wyoming bills. So he was kind of the lead on that, on this company's good, this company's bad, kind of a deal. So
Hmm.
that was really nice having somebody like that.
I see. Um, what's the most challenging aspect of running Beefchain? Because Beefchain is a separate company than your cattle ranching company, isn't it? So
Yep, it is.
what's the most challenging aspect of that?
So, the vast majority of ranchers in Wyoming are that boomer generation. The millennials and the Generation Z hasn't quite stepped in and taken control yet. So trying to explain blockchain technology to a boomer is borderline impossible. There's a lot of them that still think we're on the gold standard with our fiat currency. So, starting out with explaining to them how Bitcoin worked and how it came to be, and then what we're doing, and they're worried that they want to know, like, are they gonna get paid for their cattle in Bitcoin? I said, well, no, you don't have to.
Yeah.
That could be a possibility. That might be something I would even recommend. But just educating them on that, and then ranchers are pretty skeptical of things like this, where their information is going to be out there. They're kind of scared of that, but I think they've got to get into that type of marketing. I raised the best cattle possible. Here's all the information about them. Hopefully I get paid more for that kind of a deal. So that's been the main challenge as far as Beefchain is just getting these ranchers on board and understanding it. But once they do, once that light clicks off or flips on, then they're really all about it. They get excited about it because not only can it be a tool where consumers can see where their beef came from, a rancher can see that my steaks ended up in this high-end steakhouse. I'm doing the right thing. These animals that I'm raising are proven producers and good money makers. Or if they're seeing that their beef is ending up in McDonald's or just some lower end food chain steakhouses, they know that I need to change something up in order to get into those higher end steakhouses. So once they learn that they can use it as a tool like that, they get more excited about it. But
So
the younger rancher generations are already pretty well educated on this, even if they only understand a little bit about Bitcoin and things like that. They're still excited that they can be involved in this some way.
I say so. It's the generational differences that can be challenging because you're dealing with a completely different mindset about blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, and depending on who you're explaining it to, you have to change your way of doing it because so that becomes a challenge.
Definitely, yeah. The that boomer generation is so used to just the fiat currency, and a lot of them maybe lean towards the smaller government conservative side, but they still, I guess, trust the government more than maybe the Generation Z and millennial generation. So it's kind of hard to explain to them or to educate them on how your banking system actually works and how the Federal Reserve actually works. And you're kind of getting cheated. You're really getting cheated out of some of your money because of that system. And this is a better way. And especially when I tell them that the information or blockchain is unhackable, they're still thinking in terms of this is on the internet and that it can be hacked. But when you try to explain electrical cryptographic curves and the mathematics behind it, it's just not possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's I think there's definitely it requires a willingness to understand, and if they don't see that there's a problem, then they won't be willing to understand. But once they know the problem, what the actual problem is, I think it opens up people's patience, gives people a little bit more patience to learn it. But no, I didn't see any need to learn about money until like no one ever taught me, Federal Reserve and what you were talking about there. And I think it starts with we having to teach the younger generation. We have to teach our children about that early on, so they understand how money works, and then they don't have any problems as they get older, understanding how these things work. But
Definitely.
yeah,
I think the education system has been set up that way on purpose, where you're trained to go to a place in the morning, you leave that place in the afternoon or evening, and then you do it again tomorrow. They're training factory workers versus people that are going to be able to make themselves wealthy just understanding money.
yeah, it always
Is what
puzzles me. It always puzzles me how counterintuitive our systems are in America. How our systems are they're not designed to create the maximum. I mean, we're a capitalistic nation, and we, a lot of times our, company, these big corporations become monopolies for the sake of gaining capital, but they do not. Then that's the private side, but the public side has no conception of making something great or maximizing the efficiency of something or improvement, or it's just average. And I think there is a conflict of interest there between like the public and the private sector and that kind of thing. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I
So
think so. And
yeah. So how much time do you dedicate to running your blockchain company versus your cattle ranching business these days?
like I said, I have a meeting once a week with the Cardano folks, and it was a lot of work to get a rancher to sign up to do our QR code deal. And then it was even tougher to get a restaurant signed up. It's almost like it's a secret who owns a restaurant. So I was calling places in Portland and Denver and Aspen and all over the place trying to just get to where I can have a conversation with somebody. And it's kind of cool that it ended up being a Wyoming restaurant. It's called the Buffalo Jump in Buell, Wyoming, and was actually voted one of Wyoming's top 10 restaurants. So when I finally got to sit down and talk to them, and thankfully they were from Wyoming, so they had heard of all these blockchain laws and were excited about it. So, I would say, depending on the time of the year, with Beefchain, the fall is kind of the busier time. That's when we actually have to go to ranches and do the on-site audits. So there could be 3 or 4 days a week that I've got to dedicate to just Beefchain stuff for 2 or 3 months, and then the rest of the year is ranching. But it's definitely, I would say, at least two days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly making phone calls and doing meetings like this, because we're also working with the University of Wyoming with some groups of students on doing research with us. So I've got to meet with them and then meet with the Cardano folks. So
Okay. So if people want to learn more about your ranch and Beefchain and want to connect with you, can you give us some ways of doing that?
well, yeah, I've got there's a website. I'm sorry that it's not a really great website. We also got a Facebook page. My email address is on the
We'll link everything.
internet
So
site.
yeah, we'll plug your
And we actually,
website in there.
awesome, thanks. And yeah, I've usually got time to talk to people about this kind of stuff. I do that quite a bit. So yeah.
Awesome. Well,
And
thanks
there's
for.
been
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
um I've done some other interviews and things. There's some more Beefchain stuff on YouTube, and that's why I like doing things like this is to educate people on this blockchain technology so we can get to that mass adoption.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming, Drew. Appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about your company and your blockchain and your relationship with Cardano. And we definitely hope to have you come back on the show at some point. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, and that's all for today. By the way, guys, if there are any other questions that you wanted to ask Drew today and you didn't hear them, just put them in the comments and I'll find a way to get them answered for you. And this has been another episode of Cardano and Coffee. Guys, thanks again for coming. I'm Mustafa, the host. So long.